This is BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
So, first up this hour, David Cameron and Ed Miliband have clashed in the Commons in an escalating row over plans for TV debates in the run-up to the general election. The Prime Minister still refusing to take part unless the Green Party is included, despite the other main party leaders writing a letter to him warning him not to block the debates. Alan Sodhi has been following the saga in Westminster.
This whole row kicked off again this morning when it turned out that Ed Miliband, Nick Clegg and Nigel Farage had written identical letters to David Cameron, effectively saying that if he didn't want to take part in these TV debates, then they were going to urge the broadcasters to go ahead without him, to simply put an empty podium on the stage where the Prime Minister would otherwise be standing. The broadcasters haven't included the Greens as David Cameron wants because the broadcasters have come to the decision that in terms of impartiality and so on, the Greens are not as significant a party as those other four. Now, David Cameron thinks that that's unfair.
We had a set of European elections this year, and UKIP and the Greens both beat the Liberal Democrats, I'm afraid to say. And you either have... it's very simple. You either have both of them or you have none of them.
He was speaking there in the Commons in Prime Minister's questions where this clash happened over this issue between him and Ed Miliband.
When he says he doesn't want to take part because of the Greens, nobody believes him. Not the people behind him, not the person next to him, not the country. However he dresses it up, everyone knows he's running scared.
The suspicion around Westminster is that David Cameron figures that if he's going to be on a podium next to Nigel Farage in one of these TV debates, he'd rather have Natalie Bennett, the Green Party leader, there as well, because he thinks that she would niggle away at Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband and potentially steal away some disaffected Labour and Lib Dem voters in the same way that some Conservatives fear that Nigel Farage's UKIP might steal away some disaffected Conservatives. But David Cameron is getting some support from one party, the Green Party. Natalie Bennett says that she agrees with David Cameron. And I tell you what, you don't hear that every day.
Well, Cambridge will likely be one of the most hotly contested seats at the general election, and all 5 of those leading parties will be represented in that constituency. So, on this edition of Drive Time, we've invited them all to debate together. And I'm pleased to say they've all accepted. So, it's first of all hello to sitting MP Julian Huppert. Hello, Julian.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So, you'll sit down with all of the others, will you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the Greens should be in the debate. I think that makes lots and lots of sense. So I've said that many times before. On the other hand, I think Cameron is frankly playing chicken. He's terrified to do the debate. He has form on this. I mean, he refused to take part in the debate before the European elections between Nick Clegg and Nigel Farage, and admittedly it didn't go as well as we'd have liked, but at least we were there making the case. He refused to take part. Ed Miliband refused to take part, though he'll do this one. So I don't think Cameron should use this as an excuse. I don't think, frankly, anybody believes that he has this deep concern for the environment any more than they really believed it when he was hugging a husky and putting up a mini wind turbine.
Daniel Zeichner is the Labour candidate, joins us now. Daniel, hello to you.
Hi, Chris.
Is it David Cameron right to say the Greens should be involved?
Well, David Cameron is just scared, isn't he? I don't normally find myself agreeing with Norman Tebbit, but I think Norman Tebbit made this point at the weekend. If he carries on like this, he's just looking frightened. And I think it's actually another David Cameron misjudgment. We've seen this before in his negotiations on Europe. He hopelessly misjudges it. I think he'll give in the end. I hope he does, because I think actually we all deserve to have all the leaders involved in the debate.
Chamali Fernando joins us, the Conservative candidate. Hello, Chamali.
Hello there, Chris, and good evening to your viewers as well, your listeners rather.
Thank you for that. So, would you sit down with the Greens? Are you happy to talk to them?
Well, I think the Prime Minister's position has been clear, and yes, I would be happy for the Greens to be in the debate. He has said for over a year now that you cannot have UKIP in these debates without having the Greens. And also, the point made in your little clip earlier, not only have 300,000 people signed a petition demanding the inclusion of the Greens in these debates, they are also polling ahead of the Lib Dems in many opinion polls.
But what about the accusation that David Cameron is running scared and this is a pathetic excuse?
No, we have nothing to be afraid of because our track record in the economy, is good. The number of nurses is up, the number of doctors is up. We're the fastest growing economy in Europe. The number of people in employment is up. So we have actually a lot to scream and shout about.
Okay.
What David Cameron is saying is a democratic point. There are more leaders this time. The TV debate format should reflect this. A heads together meeting at Downing Street with all the sides included, and broadcasters should actually resolve this issue quite swiftly. The debate shaped the 2010 election campaign and turned the election into TV-based.
I'll come back to you in a moment or two. Let's go to Brussels now and bring in a man who's already won an election for UKIP. He is also the candidate for Cambridge at the general election. It's Patrick O'Flynn, MEP. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Chris.
So who should sit down together? You as an emerging party, what rights should you have?
Well, it's the broadcasters' party, isn't it? They're issuing the invitation, and they've decided that UKIP, by virtue of winning the European elections, winning 2 of the last 4 parliamentary by-elections and coming second in the other 2, has cleared hurdles they don't think the Green Party has cleared. And that's up to him. But the truth is about David Cameron is that his hard-bitten Australian spin doctor, Lynton Crosby, has forbidden him to take part. He's scared. He saw what Nigel Farage did to Nick Clegg last year in the European debates, and he doesn't want to go the same way, and it's a bit shameful for a sitting Prime Minister who, after all, before the 2010 election debates, was the prime person saying what a great thing they would be for democracy.
Well, let's bring in the 5th of our candidates now, and it is the Green candidate joining us live from Norwich. Rupert Reid will be standing for the Greens at the Cambridge general election later this year. Rupert, hello to you.
Hi, Chris.
So you're causing a stir in the Green Party, but of course you didn't do very well in Cambridge last time, did you? You only had 7% of the vote in 4th place. What gives you the right to have this national stage, do you think?
Well, Chris, everything's changed since then, as the PM pointed out, and for once I agree with Dave. We beat the Lib Dems in the European elections. We're now consistently neck and neck with the Lib Dems or ahead of them in polls. We have surged forward just as UKIP have surged forward. We have 5-party politics in Britain. We have 5-party politics in Cambridge. I'm delighted that all 5 of us are here today. Now, Chris, if we can do it here today on Radio Cambridgeshire, then for goodness sake, why can't it happen nationally as well?
Be asking that question in just a moment or two. Thank you all. Stay with me. It's 5:15.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
Continuing the conversation in just a moment or two, but of course we have to check the travel, don't we? Nikki Brighton, afternoon.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon. Delays still on the A14 heading westbound between junction 33 at the Milton interchange and 32 at the Histon interchange. That's through roadworks there. Also in Stratton, the A10 Cambridge Road, very slow. Northbound just around Wilburton Road as well. The trains are fine though. This is Nikki Brighton for BBC Radio Cambridgeshire Travel.
Thank you, Nikki. She'll be back in 15 minutes with an update. And of course, very importantly, we've got an in-depth weather at 5:30. More from our 5 candidates in just a moment.
On BBC Radio Cambridgeshire, weekday mornings from 6, the Dottie McLeod Breakfast Show.
Favourite sport? Squash. Normally, I would have said canoeing. Actually, I think I will still go with canoeing. You know, there's so many lovely places to walk in Cambridgeshire, just along the River Cam. Beautiful. Am I allowed to say Meatloaf? Is he a pop star?
Join me, Dottie McLeod, weekday mornings from 6, where I ask the questions.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. Chris Mann on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
So just to update you, the broadcasters have proposed staging 3 TV debates before the general election in May. One, a straight head-to-head between David Cameron and Ed Miliband. Another, including the Lib Dem leader Nick Clegg. And a third, adding UKIP's Nigel Farage. But the Green Party leader Natalie Bennett says she hopes the Greens can be included too. There's also a question, of course, of what happens with the SNP, who have twice as many MPs as UKIP and the Greens put together, and the Welsh Nationalists too. So let's ask our 5 candidates for their solutions. Julian Huppert, MP for Cambridge, what should be done?
Well, I think it is going to be somewhat tricky. I think for the Scots and the Welsh, it would make sense to have local debates for each of them, because there are lots of issues which are just very, very different in Scotland and in Wales. So there they should have all of the party leaders there, and they're going to be quite big debates. Otherwise, I mean, I would quite like to see a series of 3 debates where we have the 5 major national parties all in there. I think that would give us a fantastic opportunity to demonstrate what we stand for. That's the right way for it to go. I mean, there are seats where not everybody is in the race. In fact, in most seats, not all 5 parties will be in the race. But across the country, it's only right that the public get to hear from all 5.
Daniel Zeichen out and about in London, as you can probably hear there. Of course, things changed only. I think Labour had a majority of 8,500 back in about 2001 when you held Cambridge, a different candidate, of course, Daniel. How important is it that more parties are included in these debates?
Well, I think it is important, and I think the first debate should have the 5 parties in. But I think actually the difficulty is as you put more and more people in, the debate becomes less and less clear. And I'm quite in favour of actually a head-to-head directly between the 2 people who are likely to be Prime Minister. So I think probably the second or third one should be just David Cameron and Ed Miliband. And I think that will give people a chance to see exactly who is the right person to lead the country. So I think it ought to be resolvable. With goodwill, it could be. I think what's a bit depressing about this whole thing is that it has looked very much as if it's a set of posturing just to try and get some party advantage. And it may be that we'd have to have it set out a long time in advance and everyone has to sign up to those rules.
Chamali Fernando, your view on that?
I think the key thing is Patrick from Brussels made a bit of a weak point, actually. The Greens have had an MP in Parliament since the last election, and UKIP only recently gained parliamentary seats. Ultimately, the people of this country must decide. Perhaps the broadcasters could run a live text or phone-in and email poll to determine the outcome and the format of these debates. We're riding on the assumption that everyone wants to hear from politicians, and, you know, there's a few gaps.
Aren't politicians elected to make a decision? Don't you have enough ideas of your own?
It's about having a representative democracy. There are 5 parties at the moment who have parliamentary seats, and therefore all 5 parties should be in these debates. And I think this is something that can be very easily resolved with the broadcasters and the leaders of all those 5 parties.
Back to Brussels again. Patrick O'Flynn, your response to that?
Well, the solution to me is obvious, Chris, is that you should take charge of these negotiations, because you click your fingers and in a couple of hours all 5 of us have come running. And you certainly should preside over the debate in Cambridge itself and the Radio Cambridgeshire debate, which we should all take part in. And I would just make one request, though it's not a deal breaker, is can we have it outside the university? My preferred venue would be under the main stand at Cambridge United. Let's get real Cambridge people there, because one thing I won't allow personally this election to be is entirely dominated by Cambridge University, best university in the world that it is, and privileged as I was to go there.
OK, but just answer the question on the national debates, if you will. What format should they be? How many of them should there be?
Well, it's up to the broadcasters, isn't it, to invite who they want to be. I have no personal objection to Natalie Bennett going there, and there is no doubt the Greens are making strides, and I expect the Greens to do quite well in the Cambridge election, because Rupert Reid I had the privilege of debating with during the European elections when he was number 1 on the Green list, and he is a credible candidate for the Greens, although I disagree with him on virtually everything.
Okay. I'll take up your challenge on whether all of these 5 will sit down, all of you will sit down with me before the general election. I think there's a debate coming up at the Cambridge Junction on the 19th of February. I don't know if all of you were involved on that, but I do know they were tweeting about that today. Let's go back to Norwich, to Rupert Reid, the Green candidate for Cambridge. So, your idea of who should be in those national debates, Rupert, and what about this idea of, never mind the other parties, that there should be the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in a head-to-head?
Well, I'm happy with that. A 2, 3, 5 format would be fine. I'm delighted, Chris, that all 4 of my rivals here for the Cambridge seat today have all said they would be happy to have the Greens take part in the debates. What a shame that Miliband, Clegg and Farage don't have the same attitude. But, you know, I think it's easy to see why Miliband and Clegg in particular are running scared of the Greens, because they know that their supporters and indeed their party members love what we have to say, and that when people hear what we have to say, they start deserting the Lib Dems and Labour in droves and coming over to us. When they hear about our policies such as renationalising the railways, getting serious about taxing the bankers who caused the financial crisis, opposing corporate dominance of
Rupert,
supermarkets.
there'll be plenty of time for all the campaigning to come later.
Yeah, my point is that when
you will join the debate, no doubt about that.
Yeah, my point is that when the other party's members and supporters hear about us, they want to back us. So that's why I think that it's actually Miliband and Clegg who are running scared here today.
Okay, to Julian Huppert, will you take up the challenge? The others will join us. We'll have a debate here on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire before the general election.
Absolutely. We did last time, and it was a very enjoyable experience out at the BBC studios. It's good to have people standing, even if they didn't try and stand last time, so don't know how this works. We have lots of hustings. I think, in fact, the next one is coming up on Friday evening about rail, where I'll be talking about how I've been trying to get rail fares cut across the country, and there'll be lots of that chance for politicking. But in Cambridge, there will be the five of us. I dare say there'll be other candidates. We had some more last time. Everybody should have their say. But people can also have a look at what the likely outcomes are. And I think people do know that it's going to be a tight marginal race between Daniel and myself. People will have the chance to hear all of us, though.
Daniel Zeichner, will you join us for that debate?
Of course I will. I'm looking forward to hearing just how well Julian's done at getting rail fares cut across the country. But there are going to be plenty of debates. I think we've already got 14 or 15 hustings set up across Cambridge in the next few months. I don't think the problem is going to be that people can't hear from us. It may well be that a lot of people think they're hearing rather too much.
Jamali Fernando, final word from you. You'll join that debate?
Yes, of course, I'll be there, and I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
OK, thank you all for joining us. You heard there from Jamali Fernando, the Conservative candidate. Before that, Daniel Zeichner for Labour, Julian Huppert, the MP for Cambridge, Rupert Reid from the Green Party, and Patrick O'Flynn, MEP from UKIP. This has been the first of many debates, I'm sure, ahead of the general election. Usually to Drive Time on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. Still to come, we're going to be talking